Hi, I want to congratulate you on a really nice piece of animation. Very good job on this. My name is Nicole Herr. I am a senior character animator for Digital Domain. Animation that you would have seen of mine over the years. I worked on the Marvel movie Guardians of the Galaxy. I also worked on Iron Man 2. I have worked on a lot of other things, including Watchmen, Open Season, Surf's Up, Sucker Punch, pretty much animals, creatures, character, realistic, and cartoony. To find out more about me, please go to my website, www.nicoleherr.com, and you can find out more about me there. All right, I want to take a look at this with you. It's really nicely done, but let's take a quick look together.
See everything outside our dimension. That's eternity. Now to us, it's a sphere. But to them, it's a circle. See everything outside.
Oh, this is really nice. There's a lot of subtle details in here. I like the fact that you went with a very simple palette. You know, you don't have all these crazy colors everywhere. It's basically gray with a splash of flesh tone. And that's a really nice thing to have in your animation. Just it makes people really focus on the animation. So starting with just a very simple color palette, very quiet piece of dialogue, it just works really nicely. It's got a lot of subtlety. Subtlety is one of the harder things to actually really get in your animation and have just work. And I think that you did a nice job on that. Now, some of the other things that I really like, I like the fact that you've got the medicine balls here in his hand, that he's using them. They're a prop that is being actively used, but not so much that it's distracting from the rest of the performance. And then here, you pull them out, and it's like, wow, okay, not only was it a prop, but now you're actively using that prop as part of the story, which is, it's a nicely put in thing. Plus, then you're going straight into the Mickey Mouse. We, of course, know that this is Walt Disney based on, a lot of the things, the hair, the mustache, the fact that you are bringing in the corporate logo of Disney. So it's really nicely laid out. All right, so little details are things that I would change on this, or I shouldn't really say change. I would say plus. All right, that you're in a really solid spot with the animation, but little tiny details.
See everything outside.
I love this little chair turn that you've got. I love that. I think that's
dimension.
Nice.
That's eternity. Now to us.
Here at the beginning, his hands aren't really doing a lot of stuff. So you have the one hand that's just sort of hanging there by his side. If you put just a tiny little bit of a flex on those hands, just tiny little bit of flex, in there, so that you can get just a little tiny bit of movement, that'll add a touch of life. And with that, the other thing you want to do is you want to look at the spread of the fingers. So right now they're all pretty evenly spread, but if you played it just a little bit more where the fingers have just a tiny little bit more of a variation on the spread, so maybe bend this one a little bit more, pull this one over, and then that way these three fingers combine just a little bit more, then this one comes down. Now, Walt Disney was a smoker. He was also right-handed, so he did a lot of pointing with his fingers. He did a lot of, he was, a smoker. So if you put a little bit of an homage into that, where you basically imagine that he put down his cigarette, he's trying to quit, but hence the medicine balls. But as a result of being used to smoking, this one finger, he's used to having a little bit of a separation between those fingers. It's a subtle thing, and 99% of the people out there probably wouldn't catch that, but it still would be in that moment. All right, so play around with the spread of your fingers. They're a little evenly spread.
See everything out.
And then here on the other hand isn't really doing too much. It's doing a little bit, but it's not really doing very much until right around here, right around frame 65. So it's also pretty static. Put a tiny little bit of movement in there. Show us the fact that he has these objects in his hand altering the shape of his hand. So just put a tiny little bit of extra movement on there. Keep it subtle. I like the subtlety on it, but put just a little bit of movement in there. And then that way, when the fingers start moving, it's not so abrupt. It's not so, whoa, hey, there's movement there. All right. So definitely play around with the movement of the fingers, especially in those first frames. And I know with the hands, it's easy to have a hand that just sort of hangs by a character's side, because it's a lot of times as animators we're like, oh, I don't know quite what I want to do with the hand. Well, this is where going in sketching, this is where playing around with different hand poses, just, watching our own hand, set up a video camera, watch your own hand as you have your hand dangling next to your side. See what your hands do. Chances are they're not just hanging there. And I know as an animator, it's really easy to just go, oh, I'll get to it, and then run out of time.
Our dimension.
Right. I love the sway back and forth. I think that's really nice.
It's a sphere. But to them, it's a circle.
Okay. Now here, when he comes forward, here, you're getting a little close to the edge of frame. So you've got your character back here, nice overall pose. So we've got his head here. If I can draw it, let's just use this. So we've got the head in this space over here. When he comes forward, he's coming pretty far forward. You've got a pretty subtle overall animation, and then you've got this big lean forward. I would actually cut this down, probably by about half of what you've got, so that maybe instead of coming all the way over to here, maybe instead of doing that, maybe you only come over to right around here. So you get that same sense that he's coming forward, but instead of giving himself whiplash by going way far forward and then coming back, yeah, he's leaning forward, but maybe just a little bit. So just enough so that he can change how his feet are touching the ground, and then using that to turn his body. So instead of doing the big animated version, cut it in half and do something a little bit more subtle. All right, it's just all of a sudden he starts moving. And it's nice, but I think it would be a lot nicer, smaller, more subtle. All right, so yeah, I would cut it down by about half, and then that way you're not seeing so much of the top of him, you're seeing a little bit more of his facial expression as he's turning around to look behind him. All right. Now, one of the other things that having him lean so far forward does is it starts making these shadows on his shoulder look a little bit like it might be ripping through, and I know it's not, but you end up getting a little bit of a feeling that there's just too much light on that shoulder. And I know it's these blinds that it is doing it, but I think I'd soften it just a little bit because it's a really harsh light, and it's the only thing in the room that has this really harsh lighting. So I'd soften that, maybe remove the light casting on that shoulder, because it looks good on his head, but it's softer. On the shoulder, it just comes across as very, very bold. All right, and then he turns around and he moves this. here, once again, I'd go back into those hands. Curl these hands just a little bit more, break up the fingers, and then as he's coming up, you'll want to break these fingers just a little bit. So at this point, you'd start getting the index finger coming out just a little bit more. The other finger's still a little curled under, but not perfectly straight. What you want to do is you want to have the fingers curled, and then it hits its apex, and then the fingers straighten, and the hand goes down. So you get an overlapping action based on what the finger overlap is doing as the hand is going through the action. Get a little bit more curl. And then here, where's the, okay, so here's the apex. So right around here, I'd say straighten the fingers up just a little bit. So you straighten them. And then that way, then here you can get a little bit of a sense of cushion. So with that, what you want to do is you want to, use this book. This is a great book, by the way. Konstantin Stanislavski. It's great for acting. So you have the hand come out, it extends, and then when he touches, then you can compress in, so that's your overshoot, and settle up to get him to move the hand over. So there's a lot of extra overlap on the fingers. You don't want to overdo it because then it looks really performance-y. And you've got such a subtle piece of animation that crazy over the top is going to break the illusion. But if you end up getting a nice subtle performance on the hands, and then a little bit of a sense of compression when he goes to move the paper, then it's going to feel like he's really in contact with the paper. And that's really the big thing that you want to do, is you want to get that sense of contact. And right now, it's just so light. The movement is so light that it doesn't, it's missing that little tiny bit of compression. And then here, don't forget the board here. So you've got, whoops, overshooting a little bit on that. Let's grab this. So right over here on this edge, and I'm not drawing a perfect circle, but right over here, that is raised off about 1/4 of an inch from the surface of the table. So the disc is about 1/4 of an inch off. So when that hand goes off the edge of the disc, what you're going to see is the fingers are going to want to push down. That paper is pretty thin. It's not a heavy piece of paper. So to help add a little bit of realism to it, when you get the fingers off the edge of the disc, just drop them down just a little bit and put a little tiny bit of a compression on that paper. All of a sudden, it's going to add just a touch to the realism and just a little bit more believability. I know, nitpicky things, but it's the nitpicky things that really make the animations just shine. And then, of course, after it gets over here, lift the hand up just a little bit so that you get a little bit of a softer pose, maybe even curl the fingers just a touch, and you get something that feels like, you know, he's not pushing at the end, he's softening the grip. So he's pushed, and now he's softened. So he's probably going to rest his wrist down, and the hand is just going to softly lay on top of that paper. No pushing, just soft. All right? Overall, it's really nice, though.
Everything outside our dimension, that's eternity. Now, to us, it's a sphere. But to them, it's a circle.
Yeah. Oh, even your dialogue's reading really nicely. When I looked at it the first time, I looked at it without audio. And you can still read the dialogue. I think that I would push the corners in and out just a little bit more. Because he feels, it feels right, but it feels like the audio is just a little bit more pushed than what you've got the mouth doing. So I'd push the corners in and out a little bit. And you have to amplify it just a touch because he's got this mustache. The thing with the mustache is it makes him look like he's frowning. And I don't know if he's, you know, frowning, you know, maybe a little too much of a frown. But a lot of that is the mustache. It's giving him a permanent frown. You don't want to make him smile. It's not a happy piece of dialogue. But, you know, you also want to try and counter just a little bit of that mustache that's making him feel like he's frowning.
This is fear. But to them, it's a circle. See everything outside
overall it's really nice.
our dimension. That's eternity. Now to us.
Even the camera moves are working. They're subtle. This, I think, is a little hard of a push-in. But it's not bad. Yeah. Overall, it's really nice, though. I might have done it in one take, but it's a different choice. Overall, it's really nice, though.
Everything outside our dimension, that's eternity. Now to us, this is fear.
The only other thing that I would do would be soften down the eye blinks in here. I think that your blink is a little hard. You know, you're doing the standard blink, the 2 down and then 2 up. You know, you're opening it, but you're just going to the height. Another little subtle detail, because when you're dealing with humans that are not over animated, you want to get a lot of the little subtle details in there. So one of the details that I like doing with the blinks, and everybody does their blinks a little bit differently, but this is how I do my blink. Instead of just going straight down, I actually add an extra frame to my blink, and I go slightly open in my blink. Slightly open. Let's turn my gamma down here. So I go slightly open in my blink, and then down into my blink. Now, so I'll have a key here, one probably up about here, and then down here. And I might actually have a little bit, maybe 1 extra in there. But I'll set my keys in those places. And then the blink, when it's down, I overshoot, so I get a little bit of an extra compression where the upper lid pushes the bottom lid down just a little, and then that's my closing. The opening is similar. It's basically going in the opposite direction. So I go down ever so slightly, come up, and then overshoot and settle into my eye. So I get that tiny little bit of extra life. Now on the down blink, you want to lead with the eyeball. So as the eye is going down, you want to lead with that. And as the eye is coming up, or the eyelid is coming up, you want to lead with the eyelid. That combination, you get a really nice sympathetic motion between those two. It helps soften the eyes just a little bit, and it's one of those things that makes it just a little less jarring and just a little bit more subtle. And you also want to break up the eyebrows just a little bit on their timing. I like your overall shape, but I would maybe have one of them be a little bit sooner, like maybe a half a frame sooner. Doesn't need to be much, but it breaks up their timing just a little bit so that it feels a little less twinned. And one of the other things that I like that you did is right here when you're turning around, you're pushing the lips and the dialogue just a little bit extra. That's why this still reads. All right, so you've got some really, really nice things. And honestly, the notes that I have, they're very subtle notes. They're very, very subtle notes. Only other thing I would probably do is, where are his pencils? So one of the things that, as an animator, when I did traditional training, I had pencils everywhere. But I had a coil that I kept up here, right around here. And it literally was a little spring. And what you could do is you could take the pencils and you could just literally, instead of sticking it behind your ear, you just put it down on the angled board, and it would just sit there. And the coil basically acted as a grip. So you could just grab your pencil, stick it there, and it was just hanging out. If you don't want to do that, stick a pencil or two down here. But put them there. Most animators' desks were messy people. But I would definitely put a couple pencils in there. I know you've got some over here, but I'd put some in the drawing area somewhere. It's a detail. All right? Just a little tiny detail. But overall, I really like it. I think you did a really nice job, and you should be very proud of this piece. So congratulations again on winning the 11-second club for this month. It's, definitely a very deserving piece of animation, and you should be very proud of it. Good job, and keep going.